Welcome to the HU Move Makers podcast, where we highlight folks that are blazing the trail and making moves in Howard culture. Welcome to the HU Move Maker podcast, where we highlight Howard folks that are blazing the trail and making moves. Today we have a very special guest in the building. Chief Equity Officer for Pizza Hut, a Harvard Law graduate, not the real HU, but he's a Howard graduate as well.
There it is.
Former business litigator for Baker Botts, which is the biggest law firm in Texas. So he's been securing that bag for a while. McMaster-Carr Supply Company, civic engagement. This man been revitalizing Southern Dallas and Fort Worth areas, and what's the other area? Fort Worth and the Dallas area. Previous chairman of the city's South Dallas Fair Park Opportunity Fund, board of advisors of the SMU Dedman School of Law, presidential leadership scholar, recipient of the Dallas Business Journal Minority Business Leader Award, contributor to the Dallas Morning News. Lives in Oak Cliff. So we can talk about Oak Cliff. So represent Oak Cliff with his wife and children. The pride of Watauga Middle School. Ladies and gentlemen, Chequan Lewis.
Hey, brother, thanks for having me. Hey, Howard's the most important thing you said in that list, though. So let's keep that, well, besides my wife and kids, but yeah, keep that out. Yeah.
That's right. Hey, Howard University, Alpha Phi Alpha, Beta chapter, right? Got to throw that up in there.
Yes, sir.
So, man, it's good to connect with you. Of course, been following you for a minute. I mean, it seems like you just been, whatever glass ceiling there was, man, it seems like you've been knocking that down ever since you got to Howard, man, from all the things you've done at Howard to after Howard until now. So, Chief Equity Officer, man, you in the C-suite of a company that we all grew up eating, loving. I remember Book It. Book It was my thing. I used to write fake book reports just to get that pizza, bro. And now I gotta connect. You gotta
plug now, man.
I got a plug, man. So talk to me, man. I mean, this has been a really popular time for companies to develop these type of positions, these equity officer or chief diversity officer type positions. And you're actually the third person that has come on the show with this type of role, man. So talk to me, man. I mean, what is it like to be under 40, working in the C-suite of a company that is such a strong brand, and going back to your hometown and doing that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, man. Let me first say, I think it's so dope that you're doing this podcast. Like, one of the things that's really important is that we record our history, right? And so we heard it all when we were coming through school, but like we also are making it right now, like our generation and generations that are moving forward. And so like folks like you that are like taking time to record this and let us know who we are, where we come from, what we're building together, it makes a big difference. So I appreciate you.
For sure, man. I can't let Vlad TV do everything, man. I can't let some white dude come in and record Howard history before me. So I had to take initiative.
I appreciate that, man. No, but to your question, man, like what is it like? It's interesting. I mean, it's a challenge, right? Like, because it doesn't really matter what your age is or like how senior you are, you're still Black, right? And so I've gotten in a space where I've been really intentional about leaning into who I am and showing up how I am and not checking that at the door. And I think that's been a big part of why I've been able to do some of this work, right? So when I talk about this chief equity officer work, one of the first things I say to people is I don't view myself exactly like a chief diversity officer. And if you mind, I'll tell you what I mean here for a second. Because like when we look at diversity, we're talking about representational progress, deeply critical. That's the who's in the room, right? And then we start talking about inclusivity as well, which is about, who gets an opportunity to feel like they belong in organizations. But equity, and why my title is Chief Equity Officer, is what we're really interrogating is like the institutions and the procedures and the policies that make people and make organizations what they are. And I look at these things and ask myself, what type of outcomes are they generating? I think you're either generating equity or inequity. And so as the chief equity officer, I try to make this work in order to protect gains in diversity, to protect gains in inclusivity, but most importantly, look at our organization and encode this equitable thinking in every fabric and in every part of what it is that we're doing. And so doing that work, especially with some of the background I have and what I've been doing in the company already, right now is giving me a really big seat at the table in the C-suite. And I'm able to influence our business strategy and drive particular parts of the enterprise in a way to lead us towards righteous outcomes, I think. So the work is challenging. It's exciting. I mean, I'm happy to be doing it. It's a grind now.
So are you telling me that this is a real position? It's not just Chequan, you can have that office, we're gonna get you a nice salary, but you're actually making change.
Yeah, no, I mean, and if I wasn't, honestly, like I don't think I'd have the job, Josh. So, part of why I'm in the role right now is I was running a big part of our business already, Pizza Hut Express, which is our non-traditional business. And so for me, when I thought about taking this role, I had to ask myself the question that you asked me: is this going to be real? What's the charge? What's the ambition? How are we gonna resource this? And so, no, man, it's serious work. I've already laid out an initial strategy. We're working on the 2021 through 2021 vision, and there are expectations and there are parts of the enterprise and things that I report, that I do that will report to the board and report to the shareholders. So it's real work. I wasn't going to take a step back from where I was going to do some things that make us feel good, but don't actually change who we are and how we operate.
So in a position like this, I mean, it's a new position.
Right.
So I'm sure you can, like you probably came up with a business plan, a strategy of what you want to achieve, but what is what's succeeding for you in this role?
Yeah.
Like how do you, you know, it's not something that I guess you can just do overnight, but like where were you guys at when it came to diversity? And we're talking about Pizza Hut, KFC, Taco Bell,
Mhm.
Happy Burger. Honestly, I never heard of Happy Burger to be honest.
Check them
But
out.
we're
They're on the
talking
West
about
Coast.
those brands, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And these are brands that they're in all parts of America. They in when you ride on the interstate, you seeing them. When you in
Yeah.
the hood, you see them. When you in nice neighborhood, when you in the upper class areas, you're seeing these brands. It's not like a
Yeah.
Starbucks where you can say, okay, well, if you see a Starbucks, you can make a stereotype about what that neighborhood is probably
Yeah.
gonna be. This neighborhood, this brand touches all segments of not just America, but all walks of life. So
Yeah.
in terms of when you took over the role, what problems did you see? And then like right now, what are you saying, man? These things have to be done on my watch.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we're the world's largest restaurant company. Over
Wow.
140 countries, right? And
Dang, I
um,
didn't know that. The world's
yeah, man.
largest?
Yeah. And you have a Burger Grill. We just acquired that business here recently. They're based in the West Coast primarily, but it's a great brand as well. Listen, man, like part of what I'm proud of and part of why I was attracted to the work was we were trying to get this right already. And so we didn't wake up in the middle of a pandemic and after George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, and so many other names we can't list, succumb to violence at the hands of people that don't look like us and say, okay, now we got to get serious about this. And so we had been doing some work on this already, but really what I got into this role to do was to take us in a different level, to focus this work and to really think about this from a holistic perspective. So to your point about success for me, there's three things that I'm focused on right now: who we are as an employer, who we are as a franchisor, and who we are as a neighbor, right? So as an employer, that is a lot of what you hear chief diversity officers focus on. Things like, what do our numbers look like? Are we this percent Black or this percent Latino or this percent LGBTQ, right? And that stuff absolutely matters. But what I'm trying to think through is like, when we see numbers that don't make sense or don't reflect what America looks like, what's the behavior that sits underneath that? What are the organizational principles sitting underneath that say, this is what we got to fix, what's broken, right? And so for me, the first thing I'm trying to do is create a culture of listening and learning. Because what I know is that we can get as many people that look like you and me or some of my homies in there, but if it's not the type of environment that's like producing equity for people, it's not going to work, right? So,
But how do you do that? I mean,
yeah,
it's people that's been in this company probably since before you was born. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, and
absolutely.
and this company's been successful since before you got there. So why should they listen to you when, quite frankly, you probably don't even look like most of them, haven't had the experiences of them? Like, what makes you so credible?
Yeah, I mean, I do think having, I mean, one, I think it's less personal than that, but from the personal point, I do think having a track record of success inside of a business does give you credibility. And so when I came in and was running the domestic franchising part of our legal business, definitely put some wins on the board there, put some wins on the board with the Express, have good relationships inside the business with the franchisee community. So I am able to like wield some influence in that way, but like, it's not about listening to me. Mm-hmm. It's about actually turning people towards each other and listening to other folks' lived experiences. And so what I do as an executive is make sure that we create space and hold that space for people to sit and listen to each other with the attitude of respect. And there's three things I'm always talking about: intentionality, authenticity, and humility. Every time I'm in front of the company a lot, every time I speak, I make sure to talk about those points, because we can't have a culture of listening and learning without that. And intention comes first, because you have to actually set your mind to something, right? And so in this culture of listening and learning, like what we're doing is we're having hard conversations right now. We're convening about topics like racial equity in our business for the first time. We're actually centering the experiences of Black and brown employees and LGBTQ employees, so that folks who haven't lived in those experiences understand what it looks like, and know that we're demanding that we create a place where all these folks get a chance to survive and all these folks get a chance to just thrive. Because survival has been our story for so long in corporate America, and we're talking about turning that towards the perspective. So that's just in the employer piece though, right? Like the other thing that's got to happen, because what I'm learning, Josh, is you can't just talk about moral clarity. You got to also talk about market reaction for people. I'm personally convicted by moral clarity. But when you talk about a business like ours that is inclusive of a ton of folks and a ton of different perspectives, you also have to help people realize that what we're talking about needs to affect the way we do our business as well. And so from a franchisor perspective, it means making sure that we have more franchisees that represent the communities that we serve, but also really thinking about the way we show up as a business and how we're reaching more cultures with our messaging, right? How we feeding more people who love our products by thinking about like what their eclectic taste may call for. How do we build more communities? Because I think that when we build restaurants, we aren't just building boxes to sling pizza out of. We're building places that actually become pathways to possibility for folks. And then how do we lead with more purpose? Which is there's clear data, Josh, that says 55% of consumers actually expect brands to move society forward more than the government. And 2/3 of consumers are buying based on what they think their brands stand for. And so we got to be really serious about that moment as well, and do it with equity in mind.
Is that fair for people to have that expectation of like brands, versus the government? Like, what do you think about that?
I think we could chew gum and walk at the same time. Like, I think you have the right to expect something from your government and expect something from the people that you support with dollar votes. And I think what sits underneath that study though is what people see actually happening. So like in America, I don't think people are seeing our government move the conversation and move our society forward the way they want to. But they do see brands, these market actors who actually reach and touch and concern a lot of folks, actually do some things. And so whether or not we think it's fair, brands have to accept the challenge. And that's part of what I'm working against. So
is it good business for brands to be, I don't know if political is the right word, or, I think you said your number one thing is good moral. What was that?
I said I'm personally convicted by moral clarity. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that good business? Because Yum is a publicly traded company.
Of course, yeah.
So is it good business from what you've seen for companies to be invested in moral clarity, or is it more, or would you say it's better for them to be like hands off?
I begin by rejecting the premise, actually. And so there are two components. Like there's the moral clarity component. There's like, what do the markets do? And what we're finding is that they're way more like in lockstep with each other than people realize. And so as we talk about doing this in the 21st century, consumers absolutely expect that their brands have something to say about the issues of the day and be really thoughtful about that. And so I do think it's good for business. I think we talk all the time in business about what's a table stake. Like, is it a table stake to have great food? Yes. Is it a table stake for it to be easy to get our food? Yes. Is it a table stake to show people who spend money with you that you think about the world beyond the pizza transaction? Absolutely.
Dang, this brother's smart. Well, you was ready for that interview. So
it's the Howard in me. It's the Howard in me. Be clear.
That man said I reject that premise. I was like, okay. Welcome to the Go Fish Village podcast. As a Chinese proverb says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. At Go Fish, our goal is to teach individuals just like you how to build wealth through real estate. So all right, let's back up a little bit, man,
Okay.
because I'm your friend on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Obviously went to Howard, man. So I see this coming across Chequan Lewis, chief at Pizza Hut. Everything else aside, like how do you interview for a role like that? How do you prepare yourself for a role like that? Did the preparation start at at Watauga? Like how does it how do you get there, man? Because for someone like me, I had a really hard time in corporate America. I just had a hard time. I struggled with it. But I have friends like you that crushing it, man, and not just crushing it, but they're crushing it being themselves. You know what I'm saying? And letting their work speak for themselves. So, what was it like to like when you found out the position was available? What was it something that they said, "Hey, Shaquan, we have this position available. We would love for you to, consider it," or was it something that became available and you said, "Hey, I think I want to go out for this."
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, yeah, I mean, if we're honest, like they asked me to consider it, and it was something that I was interested in. One of the things I've been really trying to think about is how to make who I am in Dallas and who I am in this house and who I am in my family be more like who I am at work. Because we spent so much damn time at work that I was looking for a chance for this thing to merge together. So I do think it was like that happy medium of being like, yeah, I'm interested in this if it's going to be real and if I'm gonna get a chance to do it the right way. And I think they were interested in it because of a track record of leadership in our business. So I think those two things fit together. But you make a point I want to hit on, man, because the other piece of why I talk about authenticity so much is it's too hard for too many people to make it work in corporate America. And so like one of the things that I've done in this space is like when I show up in the boardroom, I don't become Poindexter, right? Like you will hear, I am as likely to quote Pac as I am to quote Plato, right? And you're gonna get both of that from me, right? And so you're gonna see me do that, and I'm not gonna check that at the door because I'm trying to make sure that other people have the opportunity to do the same thing. And when they
Wow.
see me doing that, they see other folks do that, right? And so I really take that as a critical part of my mission.
Now, when you were at Howard,
Yeah.
did you have straight A's the whole time at Howard?
Yes.
Oh man, bro, that's crazy. You ain't think I was gonna bring up that?
I did
That's
not.
a
No,
that's a hell of a and you were in the school of B, is that right?
nah, I was in the Honors College of Arts and Sciences.
Damn, I was trying to claim you, bro. All
I'm trying to
right,
flex, right?
I was trying to claim you, man. Yo, that's nuts, man. So okay, so you in the C suite, man. But why they pick you, man? I know you. We talked before we started recording, man, about some of the things you were able to get done.
Yeah,
And I guess the data spoke for itself.
yeah,
So talk to me about some of the things you're able to accomplish at uh, Express before taking this role on.
yeah. So to your question about why do I think they picked me, I think they picked me for some of the stuff that had happened, but I also think they picked me, Josh, because um, I'm I try to create space for people to show up and with who they are and what they have, and generally try to root for folks. But they also know I'm not going to apologize for where I am. And I'm also going to speak truth. And so I can remember last year having a meeting with the most senior people in Yum, not Pizza Hut, in Yum, like our global leadership team, and
And when we
saying some
say
things.
Yum, we're talking about the conglomerate that owns
The parent company, yeah,
the parent company of Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, KFC, and
and the
Habit.
habit, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and saying some things candidly that like were hard to hear if you're in those people's positions, right? And that are hard to say. And I'll never forget. I had a black sister with me.
Can you give like an example of like what a
Yeah,
conversation was like?
yeah. I'll tell you a direct thing that I said. I said I'm having to hold. As I sit here in front of you all, I got to hold two things in balance and equipoise with each other. One is that it's gone incredibly well for me here. I've had every executive sponsor. I've had every opportunity to do the hard and big things to show my worth. And I also need you to hear that I am the exception and not the rule. And so the problem that we have right now is that my experience is too rare here. And it's not that I'm so freaking special. It's that we aren't inclusive about how we think about this work enough. And I tell you, folks accepted that challenge. And so having that conversation led to, well, what do you think that we should do? What else do you think we need to hear, right? Because I couldn't go in there and like, I didn't want to check at the door that think like I'm in the room. Like it'd be a lie to be like everything had been offered for me. But I also thought about a lot of folks who were in that room, including some people who may have been in the room as women, for example, who can't say the exact same thing with the same boldness because of how we're oriented just as a society generally, not young. And so speaking that truth to power was one of the things I think is really attractive to our most senior leaders, because what we look for a lot of times in our business is truth tellers. Because people that don't tell you the truth really are kind of a waste of time, because like they'll never be the ones to be like, you suck, or this pizza is whack, or the way you're thinking about delivery is like bogus, right? And so you want someone that's going to say the hard thing to you, to challenge you if you're that type of leader. And I can tell you our most senior leader is that type of leader. And with from one-on-one conversations to having watched him walk the walk and talk the talk, like I think that's why this connects on that level.
Man, why is it so easy for you to be, I guess, unapologetically who you are? Because I'm sure you adapt to different environments, but at the same time, when I have people on the show, I'm just surprised at how easy it is for them to say, I'm gonna quote Tupac, or I'm gonna say like, this is what y'all need to work on, without having that fear of some type of repercussion. You a man with married, 2 kids, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Obviously you're doing well. Sometimes we might bite our tongue and be like, man, I don't want to I don't want to step on any toes and mess around and get typecast as an angry black man.
yeah.
Why are you so comfortable voicing yourself in these settings?
That's a complicated question. There are probably two things I say to it. One, it wasn't always easy. Like it was not always easy, even at Pizza Hut. And two, it's still not always easy. Um, for me, part of valor is doing the hard thing, even when it's scary. And so there are some times where, like, listen, am I experiencing are bullets actually flying? Like, no, but like it is sometimes scary to come in and be like, guys, like we're not going to talk about this person that way because that's loaded language, and I'm the only person in the room saying it, right? And we're talking about someone's career. So like that still can be a bit spooky. But what I committed to is I can't be this senior in a role like this and look myself in the mirror and look my wife and my kids in the face without trying to do the brave thing. And so I want to be clear, like sometimes it does take the brave thing. The Pac and the Play-Doh thing that I was talking about, that's me being me, right? Like I have a shirt that I wear a lot of times that says black and nerdy, like, and I'm eagerly and excitedly both of those things. And so I've gotten to a space where I'm like, that's who I am. Like, this is what's in my bag. Fortunately, I've been able to have opportunities to put a lot of skins on the wall that make people say, okay, like I look at that, and if that comes with this, then great. And I do that with the hopes that people won't be distracted by other folks' presentations without looking at the opportunities that they need to be given or the skins they put on the wall, if that makes some sense.
So when were you awarded, or when did you get the title chief equity officer? When was it made official?
August 3rd.
August 3rd, man. So if I'm looking, I see August 3rd. I'm looking at the stock price. August 3rd. Hey man, it went up, bro. It went up. It went up. You know what I'm saying? August 3rd, it was $90.92. It shot up to about 93, $94, man. So I mean,
I can promise you
so
that that has nothing to do with me.
that was you, man. That was you. You should have shot me a text like, bro, they about to make the announcement. I could have bought some stock. We could have all been straight. But anyway, man. So who was the first person? Obviously, who were some of the first people you told when it became official?
My wife, I mean, I spent some time thinking about if I really wanted to do it. Truthfully, bro, I came to the work being like I said to myself, I'm never gonna do a diversity like role or an equity like role as a black person, because I was like, I don't want to be pigeonholed. But my wife Whitney actually helped me think through this and think about what the possibilities could be and what it meant if I did it the way I've been doing the work that I've done. So as always, when anything big, she's the first person I told. And then of course, like moms, pops, my sister, my LBs, you know what I mean? My line brothers are never impressed with anything anybody does, so it's always good to have them in your life too.
Right. They just probably like the comment on your Facebook page. Like,
They
cool,
just
that's
like
what's
send me
up.
some pizza, G. Like,
So okay, so you get that role,
yeah,
which of course is super dope. Now you're settled in the C-suite. I mean, but I think one of the cool parts about it is that you grew up in that area and you get to come back home. I look on stuff on you on YouTube and I see you speaking at your elementary school and you're talking about, you know, the importance of community and how that's made you. What does it mean? And it's similar to, Alex Dixon, man. I had him on the show. He's from
Yeah.
Vegas
Yep.
and he went back home to Las Vegas and now he's president of a huge company now.
Yep.
What what was that feeling like for you to not only get the notoriety in the public, but from people that seen you grow up as a little kid and go to Howard and Harvard and do all of these amazing things. Now you're back in the where you grew up at.
It's everything. I mean, to be real about it,
Mm-hmm.
it's everything. I mean, you know, when I left home at 17 and went to Howard and then did what I did and came back, like I had a particular vision of what a return would look and feel like and what I'd be doing. It wasn't necessarily this, right? It was I assumed to be politics, I assumed to be whatever, but most importantly, I really wanted to be impact. And so when I came back home, because I want to be close to my parents as they continue to age, I just got to a place where I just asked God to make me useful. And so I
Man,
started to do work and for it to become this. I was giving a speech the other day, Josh, at this we recently launched this thing called Empowering Educators, where we're helping teachers bring anti-racist principles to the classroom. We partnered with First Book and American University's Anti-Racism Center of Policy and Research. And I began those remarks because I was just reflecting. I was looking out there and saw that my mom was one of the names on the thing. And I was like, the reason why this role is so critical to me is because I was a book it kid. I know you were too,
oh
and
yeah,
I'll never forget going to that book it on Watauga Road, where I grew up, down the street from my parents, and how
man.
important that was to me and the way that it spurred a love of reading and trying to do all these things to redeem the sacrifice that my parents had made. And so for me, if anything, it feels deeply full circle. And I'm inspired by that, and I'm inspired by trying to do some things that make it better for the kids in this place that I grew up in, but really not just this hood, everybody's hood, the Chi, Atlanta, DC, Boston, all these other places I live, and all these other places where like our community is as well.
How do you maintain that brand? How do you handle stress, man? Because for so long, as kids, we like, oh, when I get older, I'm gonna do this. And you get
Yeah,
there, and you like, damn, this is hard to maintain. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Like, how do you balance that, man? With Chequan, the CEO, the father, the civic person, the leader.
Yeah, that's bro. Honestly, and these are the type of conversations we need to be having, right? Because I think there are stories like this underneath every story. I don't always do it well, just to be honest with you. I've really had to. I can't remember if I said this or not earlier, but I've really had to pivot from striving for perfection to orienting myself around excellence. And first of all, that was a big difference, because when you strive for perfection, you just don't leave yourself room for error. And like, good luck with that, because like you're a human. So that's just not gonna be the case. And one of my big lessons for myself, man, when I had that first role at Pizza Hut, when I was in the legal team and I was running the domestic franchising stuff, I remember I made a mistake on a deal. And then on the next deal, somebody that worked for me made a mistake. And I was just like, chill out. Like, I got you. Don't worry about it. It's just a mistake. But she couldn't get over how she saw me treat my own mistake. And I realized the type of leadership shadow I was casting. And so like very recently in my mid and late 30s, I've had to have that reorientation around that. And then not just away from perfection to excellence, but also to this idea now of like, the case I'm really trying to prosecute, Josh, is, am I doing all I can with all that I have? And so that's become the new standard for me. And God has given me a lot. I feel like he's given me a lot of opportunities at Howard, a lot of opportunities at Harvard, a lot of opportunities in this community. I have a lot of things I don't have to worry about. I have a lot of people that I can reach. And so the question is like, am I doing all I can with that? And when I hold myself to that standard, then I've been able to step back from the things that we know are excellent because it's been graded, right? I'm really fortunate that my parents, so I had straight A's from the time they started giving us grades in elementary school through Howard. And so I never had a B in that point of my life. And I'm really grateful that like I had a mom and a dad who are oriented around excellence. They never checked on me about my grades. They were like, just go do it. I was just trying to make them proud, right? And so as I've gotten older now, I'm like, how do I make my mom proud? How do I make my wife proud? How do I make my kids proud? Like, what legacy am I leaving them? How do I give God glory? Those are the things that animate it. And thinking about the people that I'm doing it for and my why helps me step back from the things that would stress you about excellence. But it's not easy because like once you get the gold stars and the shiny objects, you become addicted to them. I have been addicted to them at certain points, and I'm breaking myself of some of those habits just in the spirit of humility, candidly.
So what about when it comes to picking friends, man? People that can affect your social life or your self-esteem outside of work, like, because I think that's a huge thing too, man.
Absolutely.
How do you like build your circle, man? I know you got Howard people who didn't know you from nothing, but as you get older, you know, does this person have an ulterior motive trying to be cool with me, or
Yeah.
how do you stay level headed in that regard?
Man, that's a good question. One thing I'm lucky is that I've had the same, the same best friend since I was like 8. So when I came back home, like I did have some of this stuff intact because like my crew was still here, even though we're not in the same neighborhood or whatever. But you do make a lot of new friends, and for me, most of my black friends in the Metroplex are all acquired coming back because that's just like my life was a little different growing
Hmm.
up, and so what I've typically tried to do is look for people with common values. I will say the best friends they're a group of guys, 3 of them, who I probably call like my best friends in Dallas, black guys who, yeah, like we kind of were we clicked up a little bit. They were actually a clique and they let me in technically, but I clicked up with them before any of this stuff started happening for me in Dallas because they were just like, this brother's got a really solid heart, and I see how they show up in public. I know who they are in private. I know what they're trying to chase. And most importantly, they're all about like advancing like our people and our community together. And so that's
Absolutely.
been my that's been my clique, man. And I have a lot of other friends, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But cliques
Have
are
you ever
definitely.
had to eliminate like relate like friendships because
Yes.
sometimes people could hold us back, not even intentionally, man. They just put that negative energy out there, and you like, man, I just can't be around that. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. Like I'm trying to do this with my wife and kids. With I'm trying to do this in my career, and you still talking about stuff, from homecoming 2000. Like
No,
like
that's real.
like did you like tell me about that? I mean, you can still love that person, but you know, talk to me about maybe how you deal with things like that.
Well, for me, it's like I invest my time differently. There are very few. I don't know that I can think off the top of my head of a person who I've been like, I'm not cool with you anymore. I'm deleting you out my phone. But
Right.
at a point, folks get the joke, and so I just don't invest my time in with people because it's precious, especially when you got kids. I know you got 2 little ones as well. I got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old who's had some health issues, and so my time is just spoken for in a different way. But I make investment choices of time against people are who would push me towards the things I'm trying not to be anymore. You know what I mean? Um, I make investment choices against people who live their lives in ways that just don't work with my values, right? And so one of the things like is like we live in very divisive times, right? And so like as much as I seek to be, a consensus builder, there are also certain positions you can take on race, on gender, on a range of issues that when it comes down to like equity and who people are, um, that I say, you know what, if you're on the wrong side of that from my perspective, I'm going to invest my time differently. And some of those are people that I still love,
Mm,
because we're blood. And so I just make choices like that, man, because time is limited, life is short, and I'm just trying to pour into the things that I think will be redemptive for the causes and the folks that I care about.
absolutely, man. So before Pizza Hut, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad you answered those questions. Oh, and you did mention a child. My son was born 2 pounds 4 ounces, came 3 months early. So when that happened, man, and I knew my wife was pregnant, but it was like when he was born, I was just like, yo, I ain't ready to be no father. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't
Yes.
like I didn't have a job or a solid career. It was just like it just changed, you know. I immediately started thinking about college and retirement and free
That,
time
right?
and yeah, like financial literacy. Like I immediately started thinking about everything that I should have been thinking about, after college. But to your point, man, I mean, when you have a child, because it's like you go your whole life, and well, at least I did. I hope she don't get pregnant. You know what I'm saying? To
No,
all of a sudden
right?
you get married and you like, man, I want to get pregnant. I want to have a healthy child, and you don't really realize what a blessing that is until you get married, and then people asking you, because all these things are going right in life, and then people ask you, yo, so when y'all gonna have a baby? It's like, yo, that's kind of rude. Why
Yeah.
you
Not
asking me
super
about that?
greedy.
You know what I'm saying? And then you have a child. Like I said, my son was born three months early, like in the middle of the night. My wife had preeclampsia.
Okay.
Uh, so it was shocking. So to hear you say that, that's real, man. And for me, my career really didn't take off until, I mean, I had a good position, but it really didn't take off until I had my kids and I started to be more conscious about a lot of the things that you mentioned, which is ironic because it was more responsibility, but I was able to more efficiently operate, in that regard.
Yeah.
Um, so you were at what's the name of the company? Baker Botts.
Baker Botts, yeah, it's a law firm.
So you're at Baker Botts, and that's complex business
Litigation.
litigation.
That's
That
what I did
sounds
there.
that sounds intimidating, man. So this whole idea of imposter syndrome, I take it you've never had that.
False.
How's that false, man? I mean, you got straight A's. Like, I mean, how could that be false for a guy like you?
Nah, man. I actually just got done shooting a video for the field where I came clean on the imposter syndrome thing. And I tell you, some of the highest performing people of color and women that I know still struggle with it as well. I think it's just a function of like we grow up in America, right? Like to keep it 100, and so like we weren't fed images of success through mass media that look like us. And so for me, the imposter syndrome thing is like, it's something that I'm working through. I think I'm closer to having conquered it or whatever, but it's a monster that never goes away. And I think it comes from, let me give you a perfect example. Okay. So when I was at Baker Botts, I've just come out of Harvard. I'm back home. People are excited. I got the job at the firm I really want to be at. And there's one night, you're always working late as a young associate. And there's one night when I'm coming back inside. I just went out to get a bite to eat and then going back to work for the rest of the night, like you do at law firms when you're a young associate. And a security guard stops me, and the guard says, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going up to my office." And they were like, "Office? Where do you work?" I was like, "Baker Botts." And they're like, "What do you do there?" "I'm a lawyer." And the guard was like, "You don't look like a lawyer to me." And then they had these two guards escort me up to my office and said, "If his name is not on the door, call the police." And so for me, I'm like already wrestling with the fact that I'm the only Black litigator in this office, right? And then I'm trying to overdress the part at this time. I'm wearing ties. Everybody else is in business casual because I'm like doing it. And then something like that happens, and it just triggers this thing like you don't belong here. Like even if it's quiet in your head, there are things that you just encounter that just make it start screaming. And so no,
Damn,
it's a real thing, and I deeply relate to people that are experiencing it, no matter how high functioning they are.
damn, that's a fucked up thing to have to deal with. But I guess that's more of an indictment on them. I mean, than you. But that's a real thing. So when does that imposter syndrome set in? Is it like something where like you're in the bed at night and you thinking like, man, thinking about work, like, or are you at work and like in a meeting and you like, man, I hope they don't ask me my thoughts, or
Yeah,
is it like for me it would come into play at like when they were like, hey, we're going out for drinks after this. And
yeah,
I'm like, damn, I really don't want to interact with y'all. Like, I really don't. I'm trying to leave that. You know what I'm saying? Now I gotta like
yeah,
pretend laugh at stuff, or I gotta like be fake interested in what you guys are talking about. For
Yeah.
you, when did it like affect you for entering into your mental most?
I think the times I feel it most are when, like, there's still some things about the class, growing up on a different side of the class divide, that trigger me, to be honest. And so, like, when we're on the golf course and I'm out here
Yeah.
like trying to do stuff, or when people talk about, oh, you know how when you go on vacation in Vail or Telluride, these places, or some of these other things, and they don't mean anything by it, but I'm like, I've still never been there. You know what I mean? Or,
Yeah.
oh, I grew a big one. A lot of folks grew up going to these private schools. Like, I'm a public school kid through and through until I got to Howard, right? So there are a number of those things. I don't feel it when I'm doing something
Hmm.
necessarily, right? Because, like, I mean, honestly, I feel the day I graduated from Howard, I felt like, you know what, I can do anything. And so when it's time to get to the substance, I feel ready and I feel like I come alive. I love the opportunity for people to ask me my thoughts, or I love giving a big speech to an attentive audience. But it's in those other quiet moments of, like, moving through the culture where I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm not like you. Like, I really belong? And if I don't belong, how, if I don't belong, is there really a role for me? Am I an imposter? That's where I feel it kick in a lot.
You ever sought out therapy for anything? And
Yeah,
not necessarily for like part, but just as a part of. I mean, your position is one that it's a public position and it's one with a ton of responsibility. So I'm sure having some objective person to just talk to and whatever probably helps you. So is that something that you've invested in?
have I spoken to a therapist before? Absolutely. Have I
Hmm.
invested in it? No. And I think it's a mistake. Like, I think it's a, you asking me this reminds me of a conversation that I had where I committed to someone that I was going to do this, because I'm finding myself holding a lot in this
Hmm.
space with this work. And, some of the stuff that went through with my daughter, I got, someone really close to me has a health issue. So I actually sent a note to the company a little while ago talking about these resources we have available for folks who are going through a lot in this racial moment. It was after Breonna Taylor, after the
Yeah.
grand jury mess with Breonna Taylor. I sent something out and I've not done it. And so it's somewhat hypocritical, and whether you meant to or not, I take the challenge. It's something that I should
Hmm.
invest in because I believe in it. I've seen it work. And as much time as I spend, like, in the gym or these other things, going to the barber, trying to stay fresh, like, I should absolutely be doing that. Yeah, it's an investment I need to make. And an investment means, like, you really put something behind it and you stick to it and you try to watch it grow, right? So yeah, challenge taken, bro. I don't know who told you to ask me that question, but it was it's as they say in church, they step on my toes a little bit. So yeah, I need to do that. I really do.
No, no, it's just a question I thought we have, we just have so many different things we want to accomplish, and sometimes it's like never enough. And I know for me, my priority is always like my family, but because I want to do so much for my family, work is a huge priority because
Yeah.
I get paid commission. You know what I'm saying? So it
Yep.
takes, and then I have a staff of 6 people, so it's like that balance, man. And then sometimes, you the responsibility sometimes things can just crash on you at once. And my wife is not an entrepreneur, so talking to her gets me so far. So
Yep.
that's why I asked that question, because it's something that I was thinking about doing myself. And I've had therapists come on the show and they like, yo, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, yeah, I'm
Yep.
gonna do it. And then I'm like, I'll do it, January 1st, New Year's, we gonna do it. And it just never, it never happens, man. Um, in terms of the pandemic, I know
Yeah.
that all the French, like all the people connected to Pizza Hut don't necessarily like report to you, but
Right.
you do have a responsibility as a leader for all of these different franchisees, and they're located in certain communities where protests happen, rioting
Absolutely.
happens. How did it change the business model of Pizza Hut, or and obviously you got this role in the middle of all of this thing, of all
Yeah.
of this things happening, but was there a lot of concern coming from the franchisees, like, yo, what are we gonna do? Because I have a storefront myself, You know,
Yeah.
I'm an Allstate agent, but people don't necessarily have to come into my business to do business with me, and they're not. And I do a fair amount of stuff in the community already, but from your standpoint, like, how did you guys have to pivot or rebrand or whatever? Because I mean, we see Papa John's, man. They got issues,
Yeah.
over at Papa John's with racist stuff coming from Papa John. You know what I'm saying? So, how did this pandemic situation affect your work?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things about being a global company is if you're paying attention, you can see things coming. And so with
Mhm.
us, like we saw what happened in our China business,
Oh, okay.
right? And so um, we, if I'm not mistaken, we were really first to the market in bringing domestically at least, bringing like this contactless concept. And so what we looked at is like what consumer behaviors we were seeing in other parts, and thinking about how do we get ahead and meet people not where they are, but where they're going to be in light of this pandemic. And so you saw us roll stuff like contactless curbside, where people can just roll up, and instead of if you're getting carry out, instead of going inside, you press a button that says I'm here. We come outside, you can pop your trunk and we put it in there or slide it through your door. I know some competitors are talking about it now, but we were doing that months ago because we knew that people wanted to go to brands that they trusted and they wanted to have a low touch experience, right? Or with delivery, we keep iterating on things. So like we were trying the whole contactless delivery thing out the gate, where you would show up and it would be in a, for lack of a better term, a bag, or it would be on a stand, and then you ring the door, we ring the doorbell, we step away, you grab it, we grab it, and then you leave. You know what I mean? So we're constantly thinking about the ways in which consumers need to be treated, need to be fed beyond just the food experience. To your question about protest stuff, and all the issues that come with the stranglehold that racism has in our country. Yeah, we have to think about that. You make an interesting point about storefront. We had a store in La Mesa, California, right outside San Diego, that was pretty badly vandalized, actually. And what was really cool was that community rallied around it and patched it back up and put a mural there. I think it was George Floyd, but definitely a mural there that said, like, this is our place. And it really counseled us to think about who we are as a neighbor, like I was talking about earlier. Because if we weren't if the folks that run that store and the manager and her staff weren't the type of people that folks felt like was their neighbor, nobody's there cleaning that thing up, right? And so it does give us an opportunity to think more deeply and more intentionally about who we want to be beyond the pizza transaction. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's got our business really focused on unlocking opportunity for folks. So Josh, I don't know if you saw this, we announced $100 million over 5 years that we're investing in this idea of unlocking opportunity for people, with an emphasis on frontline workers and the communities that they come from. And so what we've gotten really serious about is standing up a cross-functional squad in my business at Pizza Hut, with franchisees and with ERG members. Like, so from our multicultural ERG and our LGBTQ plus ERG, to build something that unlocks opportunity for frontline workers. And Yum has put the money behind it, and it's up to us as brands to actually execute it. And that 100 million is seed money, right? So it doesn't end there, it doesn't expire, but it's to get us started and to go deeper beyond like the legacy and literacy and book it that we have, into issues like this, to figure out like, what does it mean to really start trying to change lives of people in these communities? So it's invited us into that type of thinking beyond what does it mean to like be safer and to have the right type of sort of hygienic approaches to our work. But both of them go together.
Dang, that's amazing, man. I skipped this question accidentally. So,
Yeah, shoot.
negotiating a salary, man, is that something that you had to do?
Like ever?
Yeah. So, there's this thing in business, it's talked about. We even talked about it when I was at Howard in business school. Salary negotiating, and sometimes you learn stuff. You be like, I'm never gonna be in that position. That
Yeah.
doesn't really apply to me.
Yeah.
But is that something that you had to do in
Yeah.
your role? And did it start at Baker Botts, or like when did? At what point did you say, man, like I know my value, at least, on paper. Like, for example, I talked to Lloyd Freeman. I don't know if you know him,
Yeah.
but he was the chief diversity officer at a law firm in Jersey.
Archer,
And he
right?
was saying, yeah, Archer. So he was up for partner, right? And he So I guess he had his interview. So he brought to the interview a 120-page paper report about why he should be partner. And they were so impressed by this report that they was like, we want you to be chief diversity officer. You know, like that's how much they were impressed by it. But he was telling me like he had like, I brought this to the company, this partnership, this how it affected the bottom line, X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z. And just from talking to you, you've gotten comfortable with expressing not only your blackness, but just who Chequan is and what you're expecting from a company. So at your level, man, when you're able to impact the brand so strongly, man, is negotiating a salary something that you had to do? And without going through the numbers, like what does that look like?
Yeah, no, I've had to. So at the law firm, no, you're set to a national pay scale. I did counter the way I came into Pizza Hut. To be honest, like I did have a like, you know what, I think it should be this, and we got to the right place. Fortunately, I haven't had to do it since then. We try to be pretty open about our scale, and I can have a good sense of like where I've been, where I'm going, looking at it in the broader context. So I've had to do it. I've had to advise people on it more though. Like it's something
Mm-hmm.
I've had to talk to folks about a lot, and it's very similar to what you're saying Lloyd talked about, which is really trying to bring to bear what you're bringing to the table. Because like I would say, you don't bring an ask, bring your assets, right? And so it's like I've done this, and then to the extent you can monetize anything, that's really useful as well. I typically find that I've had to counsel people of color and women on this, and a lot of times, and it's somewhat tragic, but women, because I feel like a lot of context they have not been given. Well, I don't think we socialize them properly as fathers, husbands, as a society, generally friends, brothers, to say, you know what, like that's fine, but I deserve more. And so I try to show up in a way that helps people think about like their desert, not just morally, but like their substantive desert as well, and what it means to articulate that and say it in a responsible way, even when it's scary. And I think it is scary for some people. Like this salary negotiation piece is really critical, man, because it's how people get left behind. It's why one of the reasons I think it's so important to do pay equity analysis and try to make that stuff public. Do it semi-annual, annual, or whatever, because it's a real thing, and we know what the data says about how a generic woman and a generic man get paid for the same work. And so in
Mm-hmm.
order to do that differently, we really have to help people be intentional about what their worth is, have courage around that, and more importantly, try to create cultures around dialogue. And when people that report up through me get these new offers and have questions about it, I tell them the same thing. Like, have your questions, do your piece. Make this be what it is. There are just sometimes, Josh, you find where it's like, this is what we can offer. Publicly traded companies sometimes can have strictures on them because you report out to the shareholders and the board, but at least the exercise, if you're not comfortable or if you have questions, is a worthy endeavor for me. And so I always seek to understand that context, whether I, haggle over what I want the numbers to be, which I had before, or just need to see where I stand on like that spectrum of pay.
So do you like at that level, like are you negotiating salary, stock, days off? Like what other things should people think about beyond just the traditional stuff of, this is how much I want to get paid?
Yeah, it depends on your structure. So for me, when I think about total compensation, I think about
Mm-hmm.
healthcare, I think about stock or restricted stock units, depending on how you work. I think about the opportunity to defer income, right? Because reducing your taxable burden can sometimes be a great thing as well. It's probably something we all need to do more of to the extent we have cash flow. It's a thing on my horizon as well. Not everybody offers that. It's something to think about. What is the contribution that you make to my IRA, right? Like, will you match me? If so, will you match up to a certain point? Another really critical one is, what if I'm investing in charitable organizations, will you match me there? Can you help me maximize or amplify my impact in the community? That's a really critical thing. From a time off perspective, honestly, I'm losing sight of what time off means, and that's a thing I've got to focus on right now, because a lot of times I feel like when I'm off, I'm still on, and so I honestly don't know off the top of my head like what my vacation policy is, how many days I have. I know I've not done it in 2020, and it's something that I aspire to be able to do a little bit better. But yeah, when you're negotiating, think about the whole context and think about what your most critical need is. Sometimes it's cash in the door today. But if you're like cool on cash and you can kick up like your stock options or your restricted stock units or deferred profit sharing or these other sorts of things, you can really improve your long-term horizon. And sometimes it's easier for companies to kick more into that than it is into the money up front, depending like their cash position. Because like all these companies exist, right, to make money. So they gotta, they do have to have some level of reason about things as well. So if you can get something that gives you more long-term value, and it costs someone across the negotiating table less today, I would call that a win for you, actually. So it's something to think about if you have the luxury of thinking in the long term.
Mm. Howard, man. So,
Yeah.
and thanks for that answer. That was a really good answer. So from Watauga, right? That's the city you
Yeah.
from?
Yeah.
To how you even that just I know this is an ignorant question. How you even find Howard from
You know,
Watauga? It just sounds like a place where Howard would not be a likely next step, you
you
know?
know, yeah. When I was in high school, so I grew up in Watauga, but my high school was in Haltom City. And I remember when I told everybody I was going to Howard, they were like, "Why would you just not go to Harvard?" In my mind, like we'll get to that later or whatever. But I'm really blessed to have grown up in a family of all HBCU grads. So my mom and my dad went to Tougaloo. My sister went to Tougaloo. My granddad went to Tougaloo. I got some folks from Jackson State and Alcorn. And so HBCUs were always a critical part of what I wanted to do and what I was thinking about. And for me, Howard was my dream school. And then my backup was Morehouse. And so I was like, if I can, but I wanted to go to school with like women more immediately. And so I was like, if I can get into Howard and I can make it to where my parents don't have to worry about me going there, that's it. I don't care about anything else. And so, I've always been a history nerd. And so, I grew up thinking about, Charles Hamilton Houston and Charles Drew and Thurgood Marshall and David Dinkins and Andy Young and Donny Hathaway. Like, even though I grew up in a not very Black place, my world that my parents created for me and the world I created in my mind was very much so that. And so for me, Howard was like Shangri-La. And I was at a point in my life where being Black and like deeply intellectual in my environment didn't always work. And I was like, Howard's got to be a place that can like help me unlock like the fullness of who it is to be me. And so when I got in, I got the scholarship. I was like, this is a no-brainer. And so I bebopped on to DC and didn't look back.
Which scholarship was this?
I think it was a full ride. I think maybe we call it the Laureate Scholarship.
Because you got to be smart to get a scholarship to Howard, man. They don't give away money, man.
No, we don't.
Howard ain't giving away no bread at all.
Well, and part of that is like we should challenge ourselves as alums to like feed the endowment more so we can do more of that. But you're right, man. Like it's incredibly competitive. And so I was so fortunate to get that 4-year scholarship. And when I got it, I was just committed to like making it work because we were at a point in time where I just wasn't comfortable trying to put that burden on my parents for a lot of different reasons.
So this is that one of them scholarships where you had to maintain like a 3.5 or 3.8 or something like that?
Yeah, it was. And honestly, it was pretty high, but I don't know what it was because the standard I set for myself was like, I want to keep this run going. And so I was willing to pay the personal cost of what it meant to try to do that. And, with God's help, I was able to do it.
That's crazy, man. So when you get to Howard, man, which is a goal of yours, like, what are you thinking in terms of, like, just paint the scene, man. When you arrive on Howard, what year is this when you get to Howard?
2001.
This is 2001, man. This is the same year of 9/11. You know what I'm saying? So it's drama. I want to say, I don't know when the DC sniper was, what year that was.
It was my freshman year. Yeah.
Yeah. So you come to Howard, man, and it's crazy. I guess off campus stuff is crazy, but freshman orientation. All right, parents gone. Bye, mom. Bye, dad. You there? What are you thinking?
I got homesick way sooner than I expected, actually, because it was just far away. And like, I hadn't spent a lot of time, even though I was born in New York, I hadn't spent a lot of time on the East Coast. And so the sensibilities of some of these cats in Drew who were like from New York and other places up top, I was like, whoa, this is like different. Like, and I kind of felt like people weren't friendly. And so honestly, even though Howard's it continues to be the happiest place I've probably been for a long period of time. At first, Josh, I was like, this isn't going to work for me. And I actually called
Really?
my parents. I was like, I want to go home my first semester. And they were like, okay, if you're still not feeling it after the first year, you can come back. And I think it was just, for me, it was just such a culture shock because I just hadn't been around that type of diversity of Black people. And I wasn't yet sure that I fit into it because I was still feeling like who I was back at home. And then what I realized was like, we're all in the process of making ourselves at Howard. And I was like,
Damn,
let me
that's
make
so
myself
real,
too,
bro.
like, let me make
I love
myself
that you
too.
said that, bro. The diversity of Black people, because I've been a lot of different parts of the world, man. A lot of different cities, a lot of different settings, and to me, Howard was still the most diverse setting that I've ever been in,
Yeah,
because you're not really everybody's you're not you come in on the same playing field for the most part as everybody else, but you're getting to learn so much about your culture and so much about all these other cultures, and it's dispelling so many different stereotypes that
absolutely.
you might even have about yourself. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
thought that was awesome, man.
yeah, that's absolutely real. Yeah,
So what were you intentional about, man? I mean, you strike me as a dude that was it's sometimes I have people on the show, man, and it's like, yo, they was focused. Like you were
yeah,
focused. Like when I got to Howard, you probably would have hated me because I was like, yo, my goal is to graduate in 4 years with a 3.0. Like that was really, I
yeah.
was like, if my mom is not on my back, I was like, cool. I was like, I'm not gonna overdo it in school. I'm not gonna overdo it in nothing. I just want to be like super stress free. So I didn't really have any type of goals, which I 100% regret,
Yeah.
because a lot of people that had these goals, like people were like, yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. They actually became doctors. I was like, damn. So you really gonna be a doctor? So
Like
you really
word?
gonna go to? I was like, so you were serious about that this whole time? Okay. So for you, like, other than the academic piece, like, what were some of the goals that you had? Like, I gotta do this while I'm here.
I was kind of dramatic, man, when I got to Howard. Like I mellowed out now, but I came to Howard was like I had a vision of conquest because I was like, this is gonna be. I'm gonna come here. I'm gonna conquer all these things, and I'm gonna go on and become the president of the United States. Like I was really oriented around that type of thinking, and at first it was
Wow,
very
that's amazing,
difficult.
man.
At first it was amazing or silly. I'm not sure, right? But at first it was difficult because I just struggled with like feeling irrelevant. I was like, man, like, at home, like at Haltom, like I was Mr. Haltom. I was like, you feel like a king, right? And so I came to Howard, it's this massive pond of all these other like brilliant fish who are doing it and exhibiting it in different ways. And I was like, man, I feel irrelevant. But once I got out of my head on that piece and it was just like, okay, what are you gonna go do that, like, how are you gonna make your time here count? Which is kind of what my grandfather and my dad would always ask me. I started being like, okay, if I do really good grades, cool, but what else? And I was like, well, I want to make real friends at last. I want to explore my blackness in a way that like makes me feel more whole than I feel coming here. I really wanted to be an alpha. Like I can say this now on that side of it because my dad is an alpha, my sister's an AKA. So I was like, I really want to
Wow.
pledge beta. And then I was like, I just want to leave here feeling like I left my mark on Howard. And so when I changed it to that, as opposed to I'm gonna conquer everything, it's just like I could just chill more and like be more myself. And it ended up being the most formative experience of my life, man.
Damn, that's dope, man. Chris Tyson, man,
Yeah.
had a similar story to what you're saying when I had him
He's one
on
of my
here.
most
So that,
important mentors.
yeah, no, that's dope. That's
Yeah.
dope. I mean, I've had three guys from Howard that have went on, that beta chapter alphas that went on to Harvard
Yeah.
and are crushing it, man. So that's good to hear. So at what point did you become an alpha? Was it
Sophomore year.
sophomore? So
Yeah.
yeah, so you was focused, man. So
Yeah. I fell off
sophomore
the
year
I fell
you
off
do
the map
this.
for a full year.
So were you at all concerned about it affecting your grades at all? Because
Hell
you hear
yeah.
so many things about pledging and what's gonna happen and blah blah blah, and then your dad is the alpha. You know what I'm saying? So talk to me about like. But then you talk to guys that was pledging, they be like, "Oh, I had the best grades I ever
Yeah.
had." You know what I'm saying? When I was online, man, how did you did you already did you grow? I know your dad was an alpha, but did you grow up
Yeah.
in a house where your dad was like actively an alpha, or
Not
like in alpha culture? You know what I mean?
in alpha culture, yeah. Like he wasn't in the, from what I remember, he wasn't in the grad chapter or anything like that. But like I knew it was an important part of his life. Like I when they would take me to Tougaloo, I would see where he did his step
Yeah,
shows. I knew his line brothers, you know what I mean? But like honestly, man, for me, I just wasn't willing to. I mean, I'm trying to think how to say this. I don't want to sound egotistical. I want to be like, I wouldn't accept anything less. I'm not trying to say that, but like, what I wasn't going to do, I was not going to give the bros the satisfaction of breaking my grades. Let me put it that way. And so,
yeah.
for me, it was almost like an act of defiance to be like, oh, and I'm going to come out with a 4.0. And so,
Damn.
for me, it cost a lot, though. I mean, like, I put a lot into becoming an alpha, say it that way, and keeping my grades at a 4.0. It was very difficult. And I will tell you though, it made me feel like I could do anything after that. So when I got to Harvard, I was just like, I pledged beta and kept a 4.0. Like I'm gonna be okay, you know. So it was good in that way, but I had to disappear at times when it wasn't always, fun to do that.
Was it was it intimidating to like to because it's a bunch of unwritten rules, man, and we know at Howard everything got a process. I don't care if you usher in the church
Chapel
choir.
choir, you know.
You gonna have to do some type of hazing. Something's gonna happen no matter what organization that you belong to. But it sounds like you were fully aware of what beta chapter meant. A lot of times, like even for me, man, I became an alpha after Howard. I didn't understand like the significance of the Qs were started here, all the AKAs. I
Mhm.
didn't. That totally like went over my head. Or these are lifelong bonds. Like I was just like, yo, be gone, be missing out on off the yard for a year. Like, are y'all crazy? Like, I'm a campus
Yeah.
pal. Like, I'm thinking like that's the biggest. Why would I need anything else? But it sounds like you were aware of like the history of the organization, not just from a you got to learn this, but you were actually like internalizing like a lot of those things.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like truthfully, like I came in pursuing alpha. There were some dudes that like resonated with me, like Xavier Carter was a bro, Armand, BJ, some of these cats I knew, but I came there thinking about my dad and thinking about Martin Luther King and Thurgood Marshall and Andy
Yeah.
Young and David Dinkins, and I was like, I want to be in that. I want to contribute to that legacy. I want to extend it for this chapter because I didn't want our history to stop in terms of like the people you point to in the 1960s or something, right? Like I had that mindset with it.
What other organizations were you involved in that you feel like played a major role in your development while you were at
Yeah,
Howard?
I was in.
Were you Mr. School of B or Mr. Arts and Sciences or something like that?
Yeah, I was Mr. Howard in
Oh, okay, you
2000
Mr. Howard.
in 2003. That was important. Honestly, that was important to me too.
Damn.
Because
What
it
was your
was
talent?
um like speaking essentially. Like yeah,
Finesse. I
or
finessed.
oratory, right? Yeah.
The
But
finesse.
oratory, man. In the arts and sciences one, I talked about manhood because I feel like I had some things I wanted to say and some messages I wanted to get out, particularly around reimagining manhood as it pertains to womanhood and what that meant. And then my Mr. Howard thing I talked about, it was called Can I Testify? And so what I was trying to do was reflect openly on what it meant to use your gifts as a testimony to what God had done in your life, basically. So that's
Man,
what I did. And
that's
then I was in
crazy,
student
bro.
government. And I was in student government. So I was chief of staff in arts and
Another
science.
finesse. Another finesse.
Yeah, I mean, I had one of the crucial paid positions. We worked hard though.
Yeah, dorm sweeps.
Yeah, man, we campaigned hard. I mean, there are campaigns I've worked on since I left school that were not as hard as it was to. We ran a ticket for Jason Raven and Jacques Purvis and Dan Blakemore for Arts and Sciences Executive Council as freshmen, and we like got in and won. And like I've had races that I've helped with, like in Congress or lieutenant governor in Georgia, that were not even as hard as like it is to do some of the stuff at Howard. So,
That's
but yeah,
funny.
I spent all my time in student government as well.
Damn, it's crazy how these things that you do so young, how they play such a pivotal role in your development and
Absolutely.
opportunities that you get later on. Welcome to the Go Fish Village podcast. As a Chinese proverb says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. At Go Fish, our goal is to teach individuals just like you how to build wealth through real estate. Best Howard experience, man. What comes to mind?
Man, this is going to say, I mean, compared to everything else I've said, this is going to sound really off deck, but it is what it is. The night that we probated, like the night that we crossed, like publicly, we threw a basement party, I think on 2nd Street, and it was like the craziest party I've ever been to in my life. So, like that is certainly one of them. Is that, but I mean, truthfully, I hate to say it, like that's got to be part of it as well, right? Like I partied pretty hard at Howard, and it was a perfect counterweight to like how much grinding I was doing. So I think that was a really big one. And then, Mr. Howard meant something to me too. Like it was something that, like my nephew, I had a nephew who's like 17 now, like a star football player. He came to the game where you like out in the field at homecoming. He came and saw that. And so I think about, there's a really cool picture my sister has of me like walking over to him with the crown on. He's like a little baby. He's like now 6'3" and 205 pounds, but
Wow.
Like I got the crown on. He's like reaching out to me. Like that's a really special moment as well.
Damn. What are your thoughts on just leadership of America right now and what we're seeing in the White House? I'll just start with there. Start with that. Just what we've seen over the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, and I obviously speak in my personal capacity, right? This is Chequan from Howard, who lives in Oak Cliff talking. I think we have seen a deep degrading of the American presidency. I think leadership has been disastrous. I think that what we have seen has been a very depraved style of appealing to the worst angels of people's nature, and I find it deeply regrettable. And I really worry about the America that my son and my daughter are growing up in because of what we've seen in these 4 years. Now we should not kid ourselves, right? Like Reagan talked about being a shining city on a hill. We haven't been that for Black people, period, in this country. And so let's not act like 2016 became the moment that it got tough to be Black or gay or a woman or a person of color in America, right? But I do think that the current state of affairs with the current occupant in the White House has been as bad as you can see in the White House.
Harvard, man, were you at all intimidated when you got to Harvard? Like it's just it's such a mystique behind that brand. And how do you feel like Howard helped you, or did Howard adequately prepare you to compete in that environment?
Yeah, no, I wasn't intimidated. I was pleasantly surprised because the people were much cooler than I was expecting. Like I thought, there's some like hyper competitive aspects of the culture, but by and large, like I was really pleased with like how cool people were and like the amount of friends I met there that I'm still like actually good with, who don't look like me and didn't come from the same background. And I think the biggest reason I wasn't intimidated was Howard, actually. And so coming through the Honors College and Arts and Sciences and, doing all these things at Howard and keeping it tight. Like I came to Harvard believing that I belonged in an academic environment because, found a way to make it work at Howard. And from a Howard perspective, man, like being in poli-sci and in the honors program, it was pretty rigorous, like it wasn't chill. I just happened to enjoy it, which helped me do well. But like I worked really hard there. I don't think I worked harder at Harvard than I did at Howard. I think that's a big myth. And one of the things that frustrates me is when folks will like use my bio for things now, they'll be like Harvard educated or whatever. And like you've seen my bio, it has Howard in it. People just have it twisted. Like I went to Howard for me. I went to Harvard, for social capital, but Howard is the foundation of everything. And it made Harvard what it is, you know.
Would you say that your network from Harvard is stronger or Howard?
Ooh, it's a good question. About equal, to be honest with you. The Harvard one's certainly more recent, like, because, you know, I took 4 years off before I went to Harvard working, but no, they're about on par, actually, man. I think I talk to as many Harvard people as I do Howard people. I find them to have deeply similar legacies. I think they have international import that's on the same level. Like, internationally, you find people know Howard a ton, you know, like when you're not in this country. So yeah, I think they're actually pretty equal. I wouldn't want to do what I'm doing without having the benefit of either of them, to be honest.
Did when you graduated from Harvard, did you have like a ton of offers coming out?
Yes.
What about Howard? Was it the same way?
Not the same number. When I left Howard though, I had lasered in on one or two things I wanted to do because I knew I wasn't ready to keep going through. Like, at one point I was thinking I was going to go on and get a post-bac degree in political science or something like that. But I had a conversation with my dad that made me turn my attention to wanting to go work for a little bit. And so I started looking for a particular type of work. Like, I didn't want to go to Wall Street. I didn't want to go do pure play consulting. I wanted to go do something that was going to like engage me in a lot of different ways. And so all the things that I applied to, except for one, I got. But I was just looking for fewer things. You know what I mean? Now at Harvard, they make it to where it's a totally different experience where the law firms come to you and you have like a whole day of interviews. You just interview at all these places. It's almost like they give you a schedule. You go to a hotel room, you sit in, you interview, and you come out and you got the job or not. So I got a lot of those offers, but they were on par with each other in terms of what I was trying to do. Like, I was like, which law firm I want to go to? So you interview at a bunch. I knew I wanted a particular type of gig coming out of Howard, so I interviewed at fewer necessarily.
So I mean, what's next for you? Like, if you could have it your way,
I don't know.
is it politics, man? Are you gonna be a billionaire? Are you gonna have your own money? You know, is it more kids? Like, what are we seeing from Chequan Lewis, man, in the 5 to 10 year future?
Man, what I'm trying to do is I'm not trying to duck the question. I'm trying to figure out what hearing well done looks like, you know? And so I'm trying to like do well. I'm trying to do all I can with what I have. There was a time where I was certain it was politics. Like, you know, you couldn't convince 10 years ago, you couldn't convince me that I wasn't going to be running for Congress in 2020 in District 30. And whether that meant, however, hook or by crook, I was going to run. I don't feel that way today. I have been disenchanted with our political world right now. I don't know. I have to figure out if I feel like the highest and best use is for me to add space in that way. Right now, what I'm primarily concerned about is making deeper and more lasting impact in the world around me with the tools I got in my hand right now. So I want to do really well in this role I've got, then go on and do another executive thing and make impact from a different place of strength, and make sure that everything I'm doing resonates deeply in my community for people who look like us, for people who have been locked out, for people who believe that there's a better way to be in this country, and for people who would lock arms with people who want to move us forward in a righteous way. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to lead in that space with intentionality, with authenticity, and with humility. And we'll see exactly what that looks like. I'm much more open to what that is today than I was before.
Advice. 17-year-old coming from Watanga.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for this kid, man? It has crazy ambition.
Yeah.
Wants to have that balance at Howard. Wants to achieve. Wants to get everything they can out of Howard. What advice do you have for that 17, 18-year-old coming into Howard?
Yeah. Be open to what God is trying to do in your life. Because one of the things I've found is the more I get out of the way, the more, I get taken places I hadn't had the vocabulary to dream about yet, including like a gig like this. So that's one piece. The other piece is take your relationships seriously and hold them closely, because they become currency that you can spend when you get older and people get sick and life gets hard and you fall down and make mistakes. And then the last thing is think about impact and excellence, not ambition and conquest. And when you turn yourself towards that, so much of what you would dream about starts to be unlocked. But you gotta have a righteous destination in mind, as opposed to something that can be a little more, self-serving. Like when you think about impact and think about others and turn your attention outward, all the things that you would have wanted for selfish reasons tend to come to you if you stay open to it.
Legacy, man. Have you given any thought to what you want your legacy to be? 50, 100 years from now? Like, what does that look like?
I really want to be a husband that my wife can be proud of, to be like, you know what, that was good. He was good to me. I want my kids to be like, my dad loved me unconditionally, no matter how they turn out. And they try to set an example for us. And then I inspire them to try to think about other people first. In the private sector, Josh, I really want to develop this thesis that when big market actors lead with moral clarity, they can not only move markets, but they can move societies. And so this work has given me a chance to move against that thesis. And then the last legacy, like outside of any specific sector, is that I thought about impact in terms of other people, and that the actions that I take, the steps that I have, the words that I say will make that true. And so people can look back and be like, you know what, the one thing he did was think about other people. He tried to put other people first. And he tried to use the time that he had.
Man. So if somebody wants to get in contact with you, or not necessarily get in contact, but just, I know you write in the paper. I know you're doing some amazing things at Yum, and you're killing it, man. Let's be honest. How can people follow some of the things that you got going on?
I'm an old head, so I'm still on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I think I may have some of the other social media accounts, you know what I mean? But I'm not hard to connect with. Like, I love being connected to folks. I'm guessing it's Howard folks that be listening to this. So I love being connected with people. I'm just around, man. Like, hit me up. I'm out there. I'm not hard to connect with. I don't turn people away.
Thanks, man. Hey, you've been a great guest, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out, man. I'm so impressed with, the things that you've accomplished. We've never really had a chance to really just go back and forth like this, but you've always been a name that I've heard. Like Chequan, he got straight A's. Chequan Lewis, Harvard. Like, I was like, yo, who is this guy? You know what I'm saying? So I'm just impressed, man, by the way you're able to not only articulate, the things that you want to do, things that you have done, but you've done them. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just talk, man. And I wish you nothing but the best. And I'm looking forward to whatever you want to accomplish next, man. I'm definitely following you, man, because every time I've heard your name, it's been synonymous with achievement and empowerment. So thanks again for coming on the show, bro. Much appreciated.
I appreciate it, man. Again, thanks for doing this and holding this space for the Howard family. I think it's important. So much love to you, dog.
Thank you for joining the HU Movemaker podcast, where we highlight folks that have contributed to the Howard legacy at the highest levels. To hear more interviews or purchase merchandise, please visit www.humovemakers.com.